Hi, I'm Phil. This is my shop, and we're continuing on with part 2 of my shop tour series that I've been working on. As I've talked about in the previous episode, so if you want to go back and check that one out, you can. We talked about my lumber storage area and machine storage area, and I'm comparing my workshop to kind of the layout and format of an old World War II submarine. Everything's here, but it's all compact, small, and in a narrow linear space. Today we're moving forward, so to speak, and we're in the machinery spaces, let's call it that. It's an 8-foot by 8-foot square here that houses all of my workshop machines. We'll get to all of them and how I have them laid out. But one of the fundamental things that I want for this particular workshop is a certain amount of flexibility. So even though I have a relatively small space that I'm working with, what I do want to have is enough open space in here to be able to suit the needs of the day. So the main corridor of our shop, Broadway, so to speak, if you remember from Navy terms, has an open space that's relatively wide. I got like 3.5 feet here, side to side between some of my tools. And as I move forward into this space, it opens out even wider. Now, I don't have a lot for shop machines, and by those I would say power tools that are relatively fixed in nature. Back over there on my lumber rack, I have my big router table that I get out when I need it. Most of the time I deal with a relatively smaller router, and you'll see that set up too. So let's get started with the power tools. The first one that I want to talk about, my primary machine, is my vintage Delta 14-inch bandsaw. I picked this up from a sale at Woodsmith when we were downsizing some of our tooling there and getting some new machines. What I really like about this one is that it can do everything that I ask it to do for resawing and cutting curves. Basically all of my power sawing needs are handled with this particular tool. It has a Craig aftermarket rip fence on it that I put an auxiliary face on it just to give it a nice smooth surface. And then picked up a tip from Michael Fortune for when I need to cut narrow stock. I have a little auxiliary fence that I can just clip on the front of it to be able to cut those narrow pieces and still have that blade guard assembly relatively low down on the workpiece. Over on the other side here, I have a DeWalt 735 planer that I put on a custom cart. It's lower down than what you might see for a lot of planer carts. And the reason for that is that I wanted to be able to have enough open space on top of the cart so that I wasn't taking up a lot of vertical space. When you're working in a small shop, vertical space matters just as much as the horizontal square footage of your surface area. So that cart lives over here in the back corner, kind of adjacent to where the lumber rack is. When I need it, I can pull it out. However, you're not planing stuff every day, or at least I'm not. So I can use it as an auxiliary surface in terms of being able to set project parts that are in play for other tools, or a lot of times what I have is a small router table set up on top of that. The router table is a shop built one. That should come as no surprise for anybody who's heard me from the podcast and on the show and stuff. It's made from a shop notes plan, and I think it's one of the all-time best small router tables that are out there. I have my Bosch Colt set up in it right now. It has flip-up wings to be able to accommodate long stock, but for the most part, I find that the small surface works really well for a lot of the pieces that I'm doing. Having it parked right on top of the planer puts it at a really good working height. It's close enough to my dust collector, and I can still be able to work freely at it. And it's right next to my drill press, which is the next machine that I want to talk about. This one's a vintage Rockwell 15-017. I have another video that I did on some cleanup and tune-up work that I've done on that. The result of that is that I still need to replace some bearings. So I have a bearing kit for a project that I'm going to launch into in just a little bit. This drill press serves me really well for not only drilling, but like sanding tasks. I have a shop-made edge sander that I can attach to this pretty quickly. and use that for fine-tuning project parts, all kinds of stuff that you would normally do with a drill press beyond just making holes. Now on the base of it, because it's a floor standing one, a lot of times that space is wasted down below. I made a cabinet a few years ago that has 5 drawers in it to be able to keep all of my drill press gear pretty close at hand. Even the top surface gets put into play as a staging area for project parts or some of my other drill press related accessories. This space also includes a couple of clamp racks that I have for keeping some of my smaller clamps close at hand, but kind of tucked out of the way so they're not going to get bumped around. The final tool or machine that I have in here is my fine shop vacuum dust extractor that I use as the primary dust extractor, dust cleanup tool in the shop. It's centrally located. I have it attached to an Oneida dust deputy that I got, and I made a wall-mounted bracket for it to kind of keep it out of the way, and that's located right over here. Now you might be thinking a dust deputy and a shop vac is no match for a thickness planer, but that's one of the benefits of the DeWalt 735 is that it has a built-in blower on it. So I can bypass the vacuum altogether, don't even have to turn it on, connect it right to the dust deputy, and I can still get the Cyclone to spin out all of the chips. And it works really well when I have the shop and this space configured for its planing mode. When I want to set up to use my thickness planer, I just wheel it out from its parking spot right here into the central area of my machinery space. Then I can hook it up with a flex hose to my dust deputy Cyclone to be able to collect all the dust and chips. I'm ready to go with planing boards. I have plenty of spaces with my workbench and some of my tools here to set boards that are in process, going back and forth with it. And then when everything's done, the pack up and clean up is really easy. Just unplug it from the wall, disconnect it from the dust deputy, and then just wheel it back into its place. This central area, because it's long, works really well for breaking down long boards when I bring them home from the lumber yard. I have a pair of sawhorses that I can set up. I do a lot of that work with just a cross-cut handsaw. Sometimes if I need to, I'll use a jigsaw or a circular saw for that as well. But primarily my main cross-cutting tool is a cross-cut handsaw. This space also works with a track saw for cutting down small pieces of plywood and panels when I need to. It's tight, but I can get it done. So what do we learn from this particular section of my workshop? Well, it's really kind of the machinery heart of the shop. A lot of the power tool work gets done here. It's also one of my most flexible spaces. I've worked really hard to try and get the layout where I want it. And the whole idea is having this central corridor of open space and then having separate workstations off to each side of it. They're like their own little compartment. I can step over here into the bandsaw area. I'm over here at the drill press. If I'm at the router table, it can be right here. So even though it's a relatively small space, 64 square feet, I can get a lot out of it. And I hope you enjoy it. Next time we'll be moving forward in my shop into the control room where the workbench and a lot of the handwork gets done. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.